Words are wonderful. And whether you are a professional copywriter or trying to become one, or you're just someone who wants to connect with other people, I think we're lucky to have such a rich language that we can play and work with.
What's going on, guys? It's your hobby, David. St. Clair Speaks, and you are now tuned in to the St. Clair Speaks Show.
You are now tuned in to the St. Clair Speaks Show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. I'm your host, your hobby St. Clair. Guys, we have another incredible guest. I am sitting down with Sara Rosinsky. Sara, please let me know right now. Did I get it right?
You did beautifully.
Thank you. Now, I'm super excited for this interview. For those of you that don't know, Sara is a published author, and she has an amazing book where she's teaching people how to write, how to copyright. Now, there's a lot that was said, previously right before we started recording. So I have to kind of like catch you guys up because I feel like I'm already 15 minutes into just talking to Sara. Now, for those of you that don't know, copywriting is literally the game changer when it comes to business. How you write your emails, how you write out posts as far as content on LinkedIn, social media, etc. Sara, I want to welcome you to the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. Please tell us more about your book and the incredible work you're doing within the copyright industry.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm happy to talk about my book and copywriting. I guess I'll go in chronological order and tell you that I've been a copywriter for about 5 million years. And I got into the industry because when I graduated from college, I found myself unemployed and I found myself with a rent to pay. So I did what anyone would do, and I hung up advertisements in Boston that said basically I would do anything for money. And before I knew what was happening, I was walking dogs and polishing silver and doing, odd jobs and things. And around the time that I thought I might actually want to go into advertising, I got a call from an advertising agency that had a little gig for me to, and one thing led to another. And I ended up answering the phone at that advertising agency, and it was a small agency. So I got to learn all about the ad industry from the ground up. And I learned copywriting from the president of that company. And I never wanted to do anything else. I've done it my entire career. And because I've been a writer for so very long, I came to write, I guess I'll hold this up if we're to write this book called Unflatify Your Writing, which isn't about copywriting in particular, but it's about, I don't know if you've noticed, but English can be really tricky. There are words that sound alike or look alike and have different meanings and are easily misspelled. And so I used my copywriting skills to write some very fun, very short lessons to help people avoid making the mistakes that are so easy to make. So it's a very entertaining read, and I promise that you will write with fewer mistakes after you finish it. There's my story.
Sara, okay. I just need sometimes I just need to ground myself before I jump into it because I get really, really excited. And I want to know, what is the most exciting, there's a lot of exciting things going on right now. What is the most exciting thing that's happening in your industry?
Across my entire industry? Exciting. Ooh, gee whiz. Well, some things are seismic, but a little scary, like artificial intelligence, starting to enter the scene. That's major. I guess there are some new media that are developing where folks need copywriting. So there are solopreneurs who want to launch a course or go out on their own, and they need everything that comes with that, the email sequence, the the social media, the website, whatever it may be. So that's kind of exciting. A lot of people in my industry really like to help those solopreneurs. That's kind of new. That wasn't around so much 20 years ago, you know?
Very good point. I want to ask you, because, you know, with COVID, there has been a huge rise, of course, in freelancing, and copywriting has been leading the way. It has been leading the way. Why is that?
Well, for anyone who enjoys writing, it is a fabulous career. It is, you get to be independent, you get to set your own work schedule, you get to choose your own clients, you get to spend your day doing what you enjoy, which is writing. You get to communicate, you get to learn about various topics. I love that. I've learning about veterinary medicine on one side and snack foods on the other. So that's a blast. I don't know, it's dynamic, it's creative, and I can't recommend it highly enough. I really love it. So I think a lot of people are finding out the same thing.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's so funny. I had no interest in copywriting at all prior to COVID. Since COVID, game changer. I'm learning. For one, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I want to talk to you about LinkedIn because I believe a strong copyright will help someone stand out on LinkedIn. And I want to know, like, what's your take on LinkedIn and working with a copyright professional?
First of all, I adore LinkedIn. I started freelancing in 2016, and I immediately thought, well, here is a huge group of people in business who need my services. So I'm going to go out there and show them that I know how to write. And I started posting every single day, and I have made friends, I have made contacts, I have learned things. There not a single day goes by that I don't spend time on LinkedIn. Just love it. And also, I have to say, among the social media platforms, it is the most civilized because people, their reputation matters. So people behave themselves. And I really, I appreciate that. And I think you asked me about how to work with a copywriter. Is that right?
Yeah.
First of all, this is going to sound a little snarky, but a lot of people think they know how to do copywriting because they know how to write. They're literate, and more power to you for your literacy. But there is a difference between being able to complete a sentence and do copywriting. So I would say trust your copywriter. What else would I say about being a good client? I've been very fortunate. All of my clients have been just terrific. I guess have a good handle on what it is that you need by when you need it. Who are your decision makers? If you're working in a company, it's really good to have a clear idea of when something needs to be completed and who needs to approve it, things like that. Those are just basic business efficiencies. But yeah, do you have any other questions? I could tell you, I could go on all day, so I don't want to get too.
Sarah, one thing about me is I could ask you questions all day. Okay, we could do this all day. So sticking on the topic of copyright, of course, I want to ask you about, your thoughts with email marketing. I'm on right before we recorded. We were talking about Clubhouse briefly, and because of Clubhouse, I'm hearing a lot of people talk about, building your mailing list and having a really strong copyright. Can you talk to us about the importance of, email marketing and how that goes hand in hand with copyright, and why is that so important?
Okay, so I think there's a little bit of a difference between Target, the company Target writing emails and a solopreneur writing emails. There's a range of, sort of a very personal, longer, more narrative type of email approach. And here's the sale we're having today, and here's what, what I mean? Like there's kind of down and dirty emails that are real sales oriented. And then there are ones that are very relationship oriented. I cannot recommend highly enough, if you are interested in those, relationship forging emails, Laura Belgray, her company is called Talking Shrimp. She writes the most irresistible emails I've ever seen. She writes to you like you're her close friend. They are funny. They are just irresistible. They are the stickiest things you've ever seen. So I guess my point is there are a range of types of emails, and yes, it's a good idea to have a list and to grow that list, simply because if you're too dependent on any platform, in theory, that platform could go away or become expensive, or, you want to kind of have the keys to your kingdom. That's nice. I write some emails myself, not with any huge scheme, but it does keep me connected, and it keeps me in the forefront of people's minds when the time comes that they need a copywriter. I am top of mind, so that's helpful.
It's so funny. I was saying this morning, people don't purchase products and services. They purchase personality. And I really want to kind of like swing back to the book. I want to know it's a question within a question, of course. What was the inspiration behind writing the book, one? And what are 3 good tips that you talk about in the book?
Okay. I got to say, if it weren't for LinkedIn, this book may never have happened. It's sort of evolved because I went on LinkedIn. As I said, I wanted to show the world I knew how to write, and I wanted to be helpful. So I thought I would write little tips for folks. I did that, and people liked them. And then they started to make requests. And can you address this issue? And can you clarify this topic? And so I kept doing it. And then I had a library of these lessons. And then once I had that library of them, I realized, well, this would be really helpful for someone to have in their hand, but it would need, I could give it an index so they could look a topic up. And then I thought, well, I have to do that, because it's silly that I have this pile of lessons, but no one can really dig through them to find what they need. So it really evolved. I did not set out initially to write a book, but then I had to do it. And oh my gosh, I'm flipping through it to tell you what some of the top ones are. I'm just gonna see the most common. Here's one. Here's a mistake people make a lot. When you were a child, it is likely that your mother told you to say, Johnny and I want to go to the park, right? And so your mother always says, it's not Johnny and me, it's Johnny and I. It's Johnny and I. It's Johnny and I. So a lot of people think they always have to say so-and-so and I, but that is not the case. It's only the case when you're the subject of the sentence. So if you come home from the park and you say, a tiger chased Johnny and, you would say Johnny and me. Because if you take Johnny out of the sentence, you would say, a tiger chased me, not a tiger chased I. I know that sounds confusing, but it is a mistake that the most educated authors, I just hear it all the time. So here are, anyone who's looking, you can see I entitled this, me is not a dirty word. So some people are just afraid to use that word, but there really is a proper time to do it. Here's one. I'll tell you an anecdote. I'll tell you a little story. When I was a young copywriter, my boss was pitching the Crane stationery account. He wrote a letter to their stationers. I don't know if you remember writing letters on paper, but that's stationery. He wrote this entire letter to them and told them why our ad agency could help Cranes, with their stationery business. And I saw the letter after he'd sent it, and I said, you spelled stationery the wrong way. There are 2 different kinds of stationery. There's a stationary bike that ends with an ARY, and there's stationary like 10-pound paper or whatever, and that's ERY. So I have a little way to remember that in here. and just, associating it, I think with, I can't remember if it's got like envelopes, right? The E in envelopes or whatever. So I'm just saying, they're just little tricks like that. So easy to make mistakes. Whole bunch of other ones too, but that's a couple.
Good one right there. Yeah, you wouldn't even think about that when you're in the process of just writing that. Sticking on the topic of LinkedIn writing, I want to know what's your thoughts on LinkedIn articles? Because I've written maybe 2 LinkedIn articles, and at the time I wasn't really familiar with LinkedIn, but now I'm using LinkedIn. I want to stand out with LinkedIn articles because, it's a great way of just pretty much telling your story, talking about your expertise. What's your thoughts on LinkedIn articles?
I've written a good deal of them myself, not a ton of them. Yeah, I'd say they're pretty good. It's a free platform. You can get eyeballs on your ideas. They stay there in your library so that you can continue to get found later. You can reshare them 6 months after you've written them. No downside. I think sometimes a long post rather than an article also does really well. I haven't compared results on them so much, except for those articles just stay there, right? So they're just a little easier to access down the road. But
Thank you for streaming this episode of the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. Don't forget to visit StclairSpeaks.com and order your copy of my first book, Sweats to Suits, available now in Kindle and paperback edition. If you want to be my next guest, or my next guest, give me a referral, and I will sponsor your business in an ad segment just like this. Visit StclairSpeaks.com and learn more about the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast proposal. It's that time.
Just curious because, I want to find ways to, of course, stand out, put out more content. I'm always trying something new on the LinkedIn platform. And I think when it comes to LinkedIn articles, there's a lot more room for improvement because I'm noticing LinkedIn polls do really good on LinkedIn. So do carousels. They do really good with just the engagement, but so do LinkedIn articles. So I was just curious on, ways to get that out. I want to ask you, sticking with it too, freelancing, writing, copywriting, per se, all of this together. Of course, we're still in this quote unquote global pandemic, and there are people that are still doing freelance work, and there are people are still working remotely. What is your word of advice for, the freelancers or someone who has aspirations to do what you're doing, but they have this, what's the word, writer's block? How do you get out of that? How do you get out of your own way? That's a tough one. How do you get out of your own way with that one?
I highly recommend, I have a presentation where I show a slide and it's sort of a cartoon character just vomiting a rainbow. I just start writing, just vomit out words without censoring yourself, you can even record your own voice and you just start talking. Just what do if you're supposed to be writing about, here, I'm picking this up off of my desk, a ruler, just start brainstorming, straight edge, what is an inch? How long, just whatever occurs to you. And then you have something you can react to. You're sort of throwing a ball of clay down on the table that you can start to pinch and work on. So if the blank page is frightening you, just get rid of the blank page by putting some words on. Once you get started, you'll keep going. And don't even let the phrase writer's block exist in your vocabulary. Think of it as a hiccup or a slow start, but don't psych yourself out by thinking I can't move beyond this wall. Just move forward.
I want to ask you, man, I got so much questions when it comes to copywriting. I got all these questions. I don't know how many copywriters I've interviewed since I launched my show, but I've interviewed a couple, and I'm constantly seeing, and this is how I know leading the charge with freelancing is copywriting. Because when I go on platforms like Udemy and Skillshare, there are other copywriters that are monetizing their expertise and they're pulling people into the community and they're teaching them through courses. So in your opinion, what is the best way for someone to learn this skill? Is it, signing up for platforms like Udemy and Skillshare under someone's program? Is it picking up the book, reading the book? Is it YouTube, or is it just taking action and failing? What would you say is the best route?
The best things you can do to be a good writer, this seems obvious, but it's true. Reading and writing over and over and over and over again. And when you read for enjoyment, pay attention to why you're enjoying what you enjoy, even if it's comic books or the back of your cereal box. Really ask yourself, what is it about this that's appealing? Oh, look how they began this paragraph with a very evocative sentence, or they used alliteration. They used words that all begin with the same letter, and so it has a nice rhythm to it. Or even pay attention to the lyrics of the songs you like. What is it that you're enjoying? Just go around as if you've got a notebook in your hand at all times and pay attention. And write in a diary, write letters, write postcards. Try, if you ever see a very bad advertisement or a bad email, why don't you just rewrite that thing? How would you change it? You know what I mean? And if you really can really improve something, that might be your next new client. If you see some terrible ad for a locksmith on Main Street in your town and you think, oh my gosh, this could be so much more engaging or interesting. What if it looked like this? And then you could even use Canva, and just lay it out yourself. And, then you're on your way. So reading and writing and listening.
So kind of like swinging back to the book, I want to swing back to the book real quick. Who is the book for? And who is the book for?
This sounds terrible, but really everyone. And I say that because even highly educated people, there are just some things that are difficult to remember purposely and purposefully, like, gee, those sound alike. How can I keep them straight? Maybe I shouldn't say everyone. Maybe I'm insulting someone who's, so smart that they've memorized everything. Maybe that's the case. I would say most human beings have a few places they could use some strengthening. It's really good for folks for whom English is a second language. I mean, can you imagine trying to differentiate between their ERE, their, EIR, their THEY apostrophe, it's so I have found that people who have a mastery of English, maybe they grew up in India and they really can speak English fine, but just these weirdnesses, they really appreciate it. Certainly anybody who's doing copywriting, you don't want to make an error, right? Like if you're representing a company or a brand, you got to be on your A game. So unless you're paying a proofreader to look over everything that you do, and you really can't always depend on Grammarly. Grammarly knows a lot, but Grammarly can also stab you in the back unintentionally, but you need to know your stuff. So
I want to ask you this, is copywriting is it more so individual, or is it based on teams? Would you recommend working alone or working with a team?
I personally always like to partner with a designer. Like I like a good designer. I have a decent design sensibility and I can do, basic things if I need to. But having been in the business for so long, if you can pair yourself with a really good designer, they can make your words absolutely sing, and you can work together to make things that are so clever and powerful. So I think that's a real good team. And of course, you really, you need somebody who, ideally who's doing some kind of project management, who's, working on strategy and really identifying, how will we know if this campaign succeeds, so I can do an awful lot on my own, but I really prefer to have other people who are handling, the other parts of the project.
Very good point. That's a very good point. So I want to ask you this. If someone has any aspirations to launch just anything, right? A solo entrepreneur, someone wants to launch a business, a startup, at what point do they address the copyright? Is it from the beginning? Is it in the middle?
Well,
or it varies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about different businesses and so on. I mean, if you're going to be a solopreneur, you're always going to need to speak to some audience, right? You're either going to need to tell the market that you have something for sale, or you're always going to need to use words to talk to people. So, if you have a limited budget and you can't hire a copywriter for everything, your website, for example, is going to be a priority. That's the thing that's going to be out there all the time, and it's got to be powerful, and it's got to pull people in, and get attention and get your message across. So it's always important. It's the way you communicate with the world. So yeah, and if you've got to, go ahead.
No, because you touched on something. I want you to finish, and I kind of want to swing back to your point.
Well, I was just going to say, if you want to learn how to do it yourself, then I certainly recommend, I know Laura Belgrade teaches, there are many courses that are out there that will give you some tips on, and I'm happy to share some tips too, but if you really want to, I don't have a formal course that I can offer you, but I'm happy to share some tips here if you like.
Because I wanted to ask about the website. Because you brought up the website. I'm like, oh man, that's a great one. The importance of copywriting and doing a website, because you visit someone's website all the time, you see the copyright at the bottom, the copyright at the bottom. Can you kind of like touch on the website and the copyright?
Well, again, you've been to websites before that are terrible, and you've been to websites before that are great. The most important thing that a website has to do is it has to very clearly tell your visitor what you do. Okay. And then ideally, you will tell that visitor what you will do for them in particular. So the best websites have like a sentence that hits you in the face that just spells out exactly what you do, uniquely, beneficially, and possibly with a bit of personality, so that you'll be remembered. So that's the most important thing. Keep a call to action in mind. That's a phrase that we use in the biz. If you want someone to pick up the phone and call you, then make that really obvious. If you want them to fill out a contact form, make that really obvious. If you have some sort of giveaway where you want their email address, just make things be kind to your reader. That's the most. Make their lives easier. Make things clear. Yeah.
You made a good point, Sara. Just to swing back, you made a good point about the website, and people should know what you do by visiting your website. Same thing goes to your LinkedIn too. Same exact thing, word for word, right? The call to action in the banner, the about me. It's the same thing. Can you kind of like talk? Because I touched on LinkedIn, but I didn't touch on the importance of your profile being up to date. With a strong copyright, of people knowing what you do, how you could help them, etc.
Right. My favorite profile, are you talking about on LinkedIn, on their profiles? Yeah. Mm-hmm. My favorite ones are a little bit funny. I think when people sort of put on their proverbial business suits, they sometimes get a little uptight and a little generic. I like, I like a playful one that, it might say something like, saving, the world one ad at a time, or, something that's a little hyperbolic or whimsical, something that's going to make people go like, who is this person? Like, I want to check them out. Pay very close attention to how much will fit in that thing. I often see descriptions that are too long, and you know what I mean? They kind of trail off mid-sentence and you're not really sure. Don't waste your time on fluff words. Like, the word consultant is not inherently helpful. No one's really dying to find a consultant. That it's what will the consultant do for me? So really focus on the benefit. Saving you money. If that's what you do, say that. Saving you money every week, whatever it is, put that up front. So pay really close, because you're dealing with not just words, but character count. Like, what can I say in 30 characters that's going to make somebody want to pay attention to me? So yeah, LinkedIn. Check out, not to toot my own horn or whatever, but if you check out my LinkedIn profile, I think it says experienced advertising copywriter with, I think it says something like with 2 fully functional brain hemispheres or something like that. This is in the longer thing, but I talk about how I have sort of analytical capabilities, but also creative ones. And it's a little irreverent. And people really like it, and it makes the point of why you would want to hire me. So yeah, and pay. Again, look at those people you admire and see what they're doing, and kind of see what works and what doesn't work. Just always be observing words that do and don't work, and learn from them. The world is sort of like your textbook.
I like that gem right there. The world's like your textbook. This is a really good interview. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I feel so pulled in. So I do want to swing back to the book. That is the word of the day, is swing back. I want to swing back. So I want to swing back to the goal. What is the overall goal for the book?
The overall goal of the book is to make English less scary and intimidating, and enable people to have more fun with writing. I continue to learn every day of my life, and the stronger I continue to get to be a better and better writer, even at this age. And I can promise you, the more confident you are in your writing, the more fun you will have, and the more success you will achieve, which will make you have more fun. It really is, the English language is rich and delightful, and you can do so very much with it. And I would love for other people to enjoy it the way I do. This book gets a little bit into etymology, which is the history behind every word. There are amazing words. I started to say fascinating words. Fascinating has a very rated X kind of background to it, if anybody wants to look it up. I'm trying to think if I actually describe it in here. Let's see, here it is. The word fascinating has some racy roots. It's related to sorcery. And if you must know, quote, this is from Wiktionary, a phallus-shaped amulet worn around the neck as a preventative against witchcraft. So that's where we get the word fascinating. So just every single word has a story. The more I learn about etymology, the more I want to know, where do we get that word? Why do we say that thing? And it's just so fun. So anyway, I would love everyone to enjoy even the title of the book, Unflatify Your Writing. That's not a real word. I made that up. And that's fun, right? Like making up words. So I would like everyone to have as much fun as I do.
And I love to interview someone that's passionate. You could always tell about who's passionate about what they do and who loves what they do. I can just tell you love what you do. Sarah, I know we're summing up towards the end. We touched on a lot. We had a lot that we touched on today. If we could sum this all up, gift wrap it and package it, what is the key message takeaway for this episode that you want the listeners to take away?
Words are wonderful. And whether you are a professional copywriter or trying to become one, or you're just someone who wants to connect with other people, I think we're lucky to have such a rich language that we can play and work with.
All right, Sarah. So I need you to do yourself a huge solid because number one, your book is literally here for me already. I need to get the book. I'm excited to write, not even write in the book, but actually write in the book. I use this like highlighter thing where it's like I take notes and I take notes and I take notes and actually apply the little things that I'm learning because again, we talked a little bit, right before we started recording, we were talking about copywriting and just pretty much just improving. And for me personally, that's an area where I really want to improve and I want to be strong. And I don't want to neglect areas where I'm weak in. And that's just an area where, hey, I could improve, whether it's LinkedIn, the website, mainly the podcast too. Just really just getting that message out there. Please, Sarah, can you shout out, where can we get your book, your social media and your website, and how can we keep up with you?
Okay. Well, I have this terrible long name, Sara Rosinsky, which hopefully you can see in print somewhere, or the letters. It's Rosinsky. But I am on pretty much all the things, certainly on LinkedIn. My website is, you can go to shinyredcopy.com. That's my business site. You can go to Unflatify with 2 B's.com for the book. They're linked to one another. I'm on Twitter, Sara Rosinsky. I'm on Instagram as both Shiny Red Copy and Sara Rosinsky. And if you go to my website, I've got email lists and giveaways and all sorts of stuff. So I'm out there. If you do a search for me, I think you'll find me pretty quick.
This was a really good episode. I really, sometimes for me, when it's more of a conversation than an interview, it just resonates with you a little different. This felt more like a conversation / coaching session for me at the same time, because I'm learning so much about copyright just through conversation. This is why I get so inspired to do, these sit-down interviews, because there's someone that is doing life-changing things in a complete different industry that I want to know. And Sara, I'm so glad we had the opportunity to cross paths and have this sit down. This is not the last that you heard from me. As I mentioned to you before we started recording, I want to collaborate with you in the near future because, again, there's more that we could learn from you. And I strongly think, especially now, before I let you go, one last question? Where do you see, one last question is, where do you see your industry going within the next 10 to 15 years? Being where we are now, where do you see this 10, 15 years from now?
Wowie, I got to think. Well, I think one thing that's kind of changing and will continue to, we're each kind of our own one-person ad agency, right? Like we're each kind of out in the world on Twitter, on tech, you know what I mean? Like we're each sort of responsible for our own message. So I imagine that's going to get even more so, where individuals are crafting their own messages. So I think the language is going to change a lot. I think we may not have the apostrophe in 10 years, you know what I mean? Like things are, because you can see that on LinkedIn, on Twitter, the way people talk is really different than the way, they would talk on LinkedIn. So as those more powerful social platforms, they're going to shape the language. So anyway, and copywriting, what will it become? Good golly. There's just always going to be a need though for for writing a corporate, a brand message that's a little more polished and thoughtful and differentiating. That's a big deal. Like there's a lot of noise out there in the world, a lot of people kind of doing the same thing. So sounding different and sounding memorable becomes a pretty big challenge. So copywriting is important, how you can tell people apart, tell brands apart.
And very good point. Plus, it's COVID proof. I see it, as you mentioned, when you mentioned brands and corporations, always going to need that for brand polishing, quote unquote. You are spot on with that. Whew, all right. For my listeners, guys, look, what good is information if you don't apply it? Copyright is something we could all learn, we could all apply. And even if you don't have a business, you don't have a brand, you still need to learn, because there is a lot of ins and outs that you just don't know. And you don't know what you don't know. But if you know what you know, you need to apply it, right? So what good is information if you don't apply it? So with all that being said, Sara, I want to thank you again for spending your time with me today on the show and sharing your knowledge and expertise. Super excited to read the book, super excited to be a part of your community and pretty much catch up with everything that you have going on. For the listeners, guys, if you scroll down in the episode description, if you click the link, it will take you directly to Sara's website and also link directly to her book. Get a copy of the book, join our community, and be a part of the community. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. I'm out.